Thanks for coming.
Hi everyone. Thanks for coming.
I know this is
it's quite loud.
intense.
I mean, it's probably. I'm sure it'll be adjusted. Yeah. Okay. I think I'll start a step, but then I think we're gonna just like talk.
Just gonna go. Yeah.
Because
I mean, this is kind of an excuse. Like book signing is kind of a little boring otherwise. So I was just using it as an excuse to talk to you because I feel like we have things to talk about.
Same. What I was going to say was, I mean, the cool thing about being asked to do this and being asked to do anything like this is I get an excuse to spend some time with your work, in like a way that I texted Charlie before we came here, and I was like, I wrote in the book, like I took note, I desecrated. The Hello Chaos. Yeah. I also took some fun Post-its. So my hope is that we'll use Hello Chaos, a love story, which will also be for sale and signing over here, as to like use my marginalia as a jumping off point to talk about Cursed and AI in general. But in order to do that, because I assume not everyone here has read Hello Chaos, a love story, which I really, I think you should. It's rare that a book is so what I hope to see in the world on a subject. Not to like blow you up your anything, but it really was like a moment of intense scribbling for me. So in order to just like get everyone to some degree on the same page, if you could summarize the project, I know that's an annoying task, and maybe a little bit about its origins, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I know, this is funny, this is supposed to be about Cursed, my new book, but actually Hello Chaos, a love story, the disorder of what was my own subtitle? The disorder of seeing and being seen, which I also published with Mac previously. It didn't really get its own signing or moment or anything, so I'm kind of collapsing these two things. But they're obviously made by me kind of in this similar period of time, so they all kind of cohere in my brain. So hopefully you can help me draw that connection. But to summarize Hello Chaos, this is ostensibly a sort of critical theory book, or like looking at culture right now, what's happening in culture, and this idea around like visibility. What does it mean to sort of engage with images, to make images, to maybe be an image, and kind of thinking about that through the lens of this very abstract word, chaos, because that's kind of how I think, at least how I experience trying to navigate contemporary culture. It feels very chaotic. And so I was trying to figure out, I had this kind of general topic I wanted to write and think about and sort of describe discursively contemporary chaos and image culture. And I was making a lot of notes and trying to figure it out, and I couldn't really, it was too abstract. There was like nothing anchoring it to actual reality. I was actually in Ghana, in Accra, Ghana, totally separately, working with an NGO that I work with there that's based around textile waste and fashion sustainability. And it has the world's largest secondhand clothing market because of waste colonialism. We can get into that if we want, but that's a really other topic. And so there's all this goods and images and other things from the global north and from elsewhere that kind of wash up on Ghana's shores. And I just kept seeing Hello Kitty everywhere. Hello Kitty and Mickey Mouse were these two kind of weird characters that just kept popping up. Like you'd see a girl wearing a backpack that had Hello Kitty on it, you'd see like an apron with Hello Kitty, you'd see also then these like bootleg Hello Cotties that were from like directly from China that were a little bit misshapen and were like gesturing towards Hello Kitty, but we're not exactly that. And so I just was like, what is she doing here? And what am I doing here? There's chaos happening. And that's the more I started to think about Hello Kitty and then Mickey Mouse, who was also kind of attendant. He was also there a lot. I was just thinking like, there's something really funny happening here. And there's this weird kind of cat and mouse game that they're playing, right? Like a literal cat and a literal mouse. So there was like a fun pun. And I feel like humor and these kind of very stupid coincidences are often like a really good way into a complicated topic. Humor and just like stupidity in that way, I think, can really open up in a space of vulnerability, which is kind of what I was trying to get towards. So I was like, okay, this is perfect. So I started writing in the voice of Hello Kitty, which is interesting because she doesn't have a mouth classically, so she like has no voice. So it was a like pure space of projection, which I was like, oh, this is what an image is like a space of projection. She's like the perfect thing. She's the perfect image, kind of. So that's how I kind of got into it. And also concurrently, I was like going through a really complicated breakup. So I was like thinking about myself as like an image, and like this ex-partner of mine, like I was attached to this certain kind of like image of what the relationship was supposed to be, or what I was supposed to be in the relationship, or whatever. And so I was like journaling frantically about those things, and then suddenly I was like, oh, chaotically, like this all coheres. And so, yeah, so essentially I ended up writing this book, which is a love story between Hello Kitty and Mickey Mouse, where Hello Kitty basically has this sort of like ontological awakening of herself. She enters culture, and she's sort of, yeah, she's on a backpack, she's on a apron, she's in a water bottle, and she's like suddenly everywhere at one time, and is kind of like, how is this possible? I'm actually kind of overwhelmed by this like proliferation of myself. And then she sees her counterpart, Mickey Mouse, just like gleefully being everywhere at the same time. And she's like, he looks like he's having a lot more fun than I am. I want to be like that, you know? And so then she gets this kind of confused dynamic where, not to give away the entire book, but read the book if you have it, and you'll find the ending. But anyway, she falls in love with Mickey Mouse, but Mickey Mouse turns out to be a gay.
I was gonna say there's a twist in
yeah.
Mickey is gay, yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, Minnie Mouse is just Mickey in drag, right? So
Sure.
like, he's obsessed with himself, and he only wants to, he's like constantly trying to attain the hotter version of himself. He's like after the hottest, newest, most contemporary, shiny Mickey, which is also himself, but he's kind of maybe not as sensitive as Kitty, so he's not aware that there's this sort of like identification process that he's kind of falling into the trap of. Anyway, this is what the book is about. It's my chaos, sorry guys.
No, that summary, that was a great summary, and I feel like it speaks to like the chaos, but also complexity of like what is really a high-low story, as in, you know, you're dealing with these like characters that wash up on the shores, you know, just barfed up on the shores of capitalism constantly, but also there's like this, I mean, you use the word ontological, and you know, it's like a kind of annoying.
Sorry.
No, but it's important that we ask it, because I do think like where the story can get sort of confusing, but I think is important, is like, I wrote, the note I have in that is essentially like reverse Toy Story, which is to say that, you know, the moment in Toy Story where Buzz Lightyear realizes he is one of, you know, some incredible number of Buzz Lightyears, Kitty is very interestingly, it's the opposite. She doesn't exist in the world as a manifested Kitty. She is the image of Kitty. And I guess...
Right, like there isn't actually a single iteration that encapsulates her. She kind of like exists in this cloud of abstraction.
Yes.
Which is, I think, like the contemporary experience, right? Like, am I my Instagram account? Or am I the person who like got dumped and is like really sad?
Totally.
Secretly behind the, you know, like which one am I? Who would like, yeah, this is what I was trying to get towards. Basically.
Absolutely. So my question is, I mean, this is like part of why I was so interested in the book is, in a very secular way, I think you're entering like, I mean, almost like the cosmic logic, or I would even say like spiritual logic of the book. Like, where does the book take place? Do you know what I mean? Like it almost, it's like it takes place in like what Plato might have said in like the realm of forms or something.
Yeah.
Where does this love story take place to you, Charlie? I'm serious.
The internet.
Oh.
No, actually, I don't know. I mean, I was trying to sort of like, maybe that was sort of like the task of the book that I weirdly actually kind of subconsciously was setting for myself. Is like, where is the internet? also, like, because it does have like a physical manifestation and it has physical ramifications, right? Which is like what I was experiencing when I was in Ghana. I was like, oh, here's the like real material and like socio-political consequences of all the image stuff. You know, people are obsessed with Hello Kitty. Like a t-shirt with Hello Kitty is somehow like a better t-shirt than a t-shirt without Hello Kitty to some people, right? And like, but materially they are the same thing. So I was like trying to understand like what value images were sort of like adding to the world and like how that actually had a material effect. And so yeah, I think I was actually like also sort of plagued with this idea of like space and placelessness, right? Like trying to locate actually like, yeah, where do images go? Where do they exist? And you know, they are this kind of like non-space, but they obviously have an impact on physical space. And so I was trying to understand how that is possible. It feels like kind of like a dissonance in some way. And so I was trying to sort of like make the dissonance cohere. Which actually, can I ask you a question? This is like
sure,
maybe messing up the flow of anything.
No, there is no flow. This is madness.
Chaos. I've been trying to like work through this, thinking of like the internet and like, I don't know, a sort of like teleology of the internet. I've kind of had this sort of like tentative formulation that I'm working with. I want to see if you agree with this or like what you think of this. Is that I feel like the first stage of the internet was, which I'm like first generation internet, I feel, as an elder millennial.
How old are you?
I'm 37.
I'm 35, okay. We're
1987, yeah. There's irony, right? Like suddenly you see everything happening, you see yourself, you see the rest of the world happening in the world, and so you have like a self-reflection moment, which is kind of irony. Like you have a self-awareness, you see yourself. And I feel like that like also informs just like culture production under millennials. Like millennial humor is very ironic, right? Then we get to like the sort of Gen Z moment, which is absurdity. So we have irony and then we have absurdity. And absurdity is this kind of thing where it's like, I'm overwhelmed, there's like a profusion of imagery, none of it makes sense. It's like everything and everything all at once, or whatever the title of that movie was. Like that's what's happening, and the only way I can make sense of it is just like mash it together and be like, oh my God, SpongeBob as a dominatrix. It's so funny because it makes no sense. Like the fact that it makes no sense like feels very real, and so that's funny to me. So then there's like this phase of moving into absurdity. And then the stage that I think we're kind of entering in now is like the stage of dissonance, of contradiction, where we understand that actually there's all these like really, dissonant things happening simultaneously, and we like don't know how to hold the fact that two different things that feel completely diametrically opposed are coexisting, like within ourselves as much as in the world. And we like actually don't know what to do about that, and so we're kind of, and unfortunately I feel a lot of us are going into a place of like defeat, or like a sort of sad or sort of like cruel optimist, or not kind of acceptance, a cruel acceptance of it, rather than a sort of like emphatic, excited acceptance. But I don't know, what do you think of this formulation, irony to absurdity to dissonance?
I really like it, and I agree with it. I would say...
And I don't think it's linear. I feel like you can have like a bit of a maze.
For sure, and also, they all contain bits of each other. Like I would say, I completely agree with the classification of like the millennial, the generations get really, really silly. But in that irony is actually like I would say almost a confidence in the duality. Do you know what I mean? And that allows for like a recognition of like this. Okay, wait, I'm sorry, what was the second one? Remind me one more time, because I really...
Irony, absurdity, dissonance.
I would say the absurdity...
I need to come up with maybe a better word for
this. The absurdity...
Contradiction.
The absurdity is like the absolutely sensible reflex or reaction to actually what I think the irony is, in a way, sincerity, because it's an incredible...
Yeah, it's like the inverse of... It's like the dissonant version of sincerity.
And I would say the absurdity betrays an actual recognition of how the confidence in the ways in which our generation saw things was hubris. What was sort of really, really sincerely identifying something as authentic or inauthentic, or
Sure. Yeah.
or really being overconfidently drawing those lines and building a politics out of it a lot of the time. So I think the absurdity makes total sense. As much as like on the internet, it can take, it can go to the realm of the troll or the
Right.
but I think the instinct is actually like really, like almost like a defense of the unknowability of reality of the human spirit.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say, is that
Yeah.
like, those are three different kind of responses that might be collapsible, but they're like a response to like vulnerability, like the vulnerability of contemporary life and of the internet, right? It's like, how do I protect myself because I feel really exposed suddenly because there are like, I'm overwhelmed. Like there's images of myself, there's images of everything I've ever dreamed of, and like maybe this can help us lead into AI. It's like now literally anything anyone can think about is possible like instantaneously without a sort of material consequence, like, aside from the environmental stuff, which we can talk about or not if we want. But you know what I mean? Like we're entering a phase where like literally everything is not only possible, but like probably will happen. There's, what is this, the like Urban Dictionary rule, like rule 32 or something? Is it 32? Where it's like, if it exists, there's a porn of it.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Which like, we're only going deeper into that, right? Where it's like, now it's like, not only will there be a porn of it, there'll also be like a children's book of it, there'll be a TV show of it, there'll be a whatever, self-help podcast about it. You know what I mean? Like everything, every version of everything is going to be possible, and like in the fact that it's possible, it will happen, right? Is this sort of like future that AI at least sort of like conjures for us, whether or not that's really what's going to happen, right? And I think that this is the thing that is really overwhelming to people, and what like really freaks people out is that they're like, my agency has completely left me if like anyone can just observe me and then reproduce me in any scenario. Like if I'm infinitely configurable, basically, by anyone or by a machine even, by no one, like what does that do to me? How does that affect my relationship to myself, my relationship to others? I feel like this is the thing that is like really activating everyone. Because, I don't know, or do you agree?
No, I completely agree. It's just, we're gonna need a bigger boat, kind of like, I guess in terms of, I want to quickly respond to the last era that you're talking about, or like, whatever we're in now. You said contradiction? No, what did you say?
Yeah, contradiction or dissonance. Dissonance is maybe too fancy.
No, but I think I'm encouraged by that actually.
Yeah, because it feels a little bit like the stages of grief, right? It's like we're kind of getting to a place of like, okay.
Well, it feels like, generally to me, like the third place is usually better. And what I mean by that is sort of like the pendulum like swung both ways, and now we're like, ideally, I'm a big believer in like the signature of truth is contradiction. That the hallmark of truth is paradox, and I think one of the things we fell into in this, as tech sort of exploded in the last 20 years, what was sort of, was sort of doing lowercase m mystery as opposed to capital M mystery. Like trying to solve something and assume there's a singular answer, rather than allowing for...
Like there is no answer, and the seeking or the experiencing is...
So I just listened to your Charlie has like a wonderful conversation with Jem Fletcher.
On the Messy Truth podcast.
Yes, and you mentioned sort of like the yin-yang...
that's like, I put it on the cover.
Yeah,
the horseshoe.
That it contains both, and I think Mickey and Minnie as sort of,
Mickey
Kitty and Mickey, and Charlie wonderfully calls Kitty a power bottom in this book, which I think is like totally right. And Mickey,
she's the ultimate sub.
Yeah, but I read this as sort of like, we all contain Kitties and Mickeys, and you contain... I read this as sort of like a personal, internal, but also like a societal bothness. And trying to fully be one or the other rather than or if that's not your kind of like existential outlook, oscillating back and forth at such a rapid pace that we like in some ways are both, was to me sort of where this book landed in a way I love.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's like, you see the cover, right? This is like, it's like two horseshoes that are being like crammed together to make binoculars, this kind of thing together. But I was like I don't know, this idea of horseshoe theory and then like the image of a horseshoe was kind of the emblem of this book to me, where it's like, and horseshoe theory, for those who don't know what that is, it's basically the idea that like, it's a political theory idea, which is actually kind of discredited now, but like the idea that like the extreme left and the extreme right are actually closer to each other and than to like the center left or the center right. Like the center is way up here, and then the alt-right and alt-left are like almost touching. They're so similar in terms of just how they experience the world and how they operate in the world, right? That's in politics, but I think you can kind of, basically everything has this sort of horseshoe spectrum or this like valence, where there's like this tiny, very tiny gap in between the two, and I was like really fascinated by what is happening in the gap. Like what actually separates the far right from the far left, if we want to keep using that formulation. Or like what's the difference between Hello Kitty and Mickey Mouse, if they're the opposites, or like masculinity and femininity, or whatever binaries we want to.
I would say like if Kitty is sort of the left here, and I would say Mickey's the right here.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%, yeah. I make that quite explicit.
Okay,
actually.
It's in there. Right?
Yeah, and I was like interested in like how can you cross that gap, and like what does it mean to do that, or like what is inside the gap, Yeah, and just I'm ready to like spin off into abstraction, which is my habit. So I'm
giggling because I'm realizing, Charlie, I think we both are, and maybe we should like ground
specific.
We should ground this a little bit more. I think we're like getting. Yeah. Okay. I have a grounding question.
Great. Let's ground us.
Okay.
I'm gonna take a deep breath.
Yeah. Get out of. Okay. Also, well, no. See, I was about to go to a tangent. I'm not gonna do it. What makes Hello Kitty? So you'll see this is a lot of writing in this book, but behind all the writing is an incredible amount of images of Hello Kitty and Mickey merch, just how
memes
many
and etc.
On the memes, But my question to you was, why do you think Hello Kitty is the phrase I underlined in the book was impervious cuteness, maybe? Oh no, maybe that wasn't. But why is Hello Kitty like the perfect image to slap onto consumer goods?
Okay. Okay, well first, like I was saying earlier, she has no mouth, right? So she has like no persona really, or like she doesn't have a certain kind of agency that comes with being able to like vocalize what's happening to you, right? Like, so there's a certain passivity, like this power bottom quality to her, this sub quality is actually like great because that means that people feel entitled to do whatever they want to it, right? Which kind of means that it's actually like completely flexible in that way, right? People don't have like a compunction against destroying the image or like bastardizing
she's
the image.
Indestructible. She pops right back up on the next
Right, exactly. And there's like a feeling that is true with her. She has a kind of robustness, which I think is also deeply related to how cute she is. There's like cuteness is really important too, right? There's this obvious, like again, this kind of dissonance exists within cuteness, right? Where like something cute, it's so cute that you want to kill it. Like you want to squeeze it so fucking hard, or you want to eat it, right? And it's like, because you love it so much, you want to kill it. And like there is a weird dissonant feeling that's happening with cuteness that is also very powerful. I mean, there's tons of theory written about cuteness. So I feel like she's kind of the archetypical cute thing. So she also has the kind of, that sort of sub-power of cute. And I think attending that is also this like femininity or this kind of, and youth, this kind of like softness that again is like pliable, or there's like an idea that it's pliable, and so people kind of engage with that pliability, which is why, and why she's like, she can be a condom, she can be a butt plug. There's all these
on guns.
She can be on a gun, she can be, a pacifier, she can be a backpack, whatever. I was explaining to you that like when I got writer's block during this book, one of my favorite things is that I would ask ChatGPT to generate me like a random list of objects, and then I would just go into Google and type Hello Kitty and just go through the list of objects. And again, like this is the AI phenomenon that pre-existed AI. It's like anything that you can think of, there is a Hello Kitty version of it. It already exists, and you can find a picture of it on the internet. And so that was like a very fun, helpful way for me to just like keep thinking through this topic, was I would just be like, what's a Hello Kitty broccoli look like? Or like, I don't know, Hello Kitty chair, or whatever, you know, and like, it was there, it would come up. Yeah, which leans kind of into this AI. Maybe we should actually talk about Cursed if you have some. Maybe you don't have anything to say about Cursed, you only want to talk about this other
time is fast.
But
we got a couple more minutes.
Okay, we don't have to rush it.
Okay. But
I spent a lot more time writing this book than I did making this book, so I'm happy to keep talking about this. But I think people are here to talk about Cursed. So maybe we should.
One more question about this.
Please.
Excuse me. This is related to, I think, our relationship with images in general. So hopefully it'll be a decent segue to AI. And I think at our core, as like me as a writer and an artist, you as a photographer and an artist and a thinker, our relationship with images is, I think, where we really overlap that interest. There's a moment in the book where you mentioned just now, Kitty does not have a mouth, and Mickey does. And I don't remember the exact line, but it's something like, you talk about her eyes. Basically, there's a moment where it's sort of...
Like her eyes become her mouth.
Well, it's what I'm going to ask you is, it sounds like a joke, but we are clearly a culture, just society drowning in images, and I would say I would argue, maybe this is something we can talk about, like has a somewhat dysfunctional relationship with images.
Sure.
Okay, sure. I'm surprised you agreed to some extent. And when I read that in the book, basically it made me think something that I've thought before. It's like, oh, we're using the wrong hole. Essentially, like, Kitty doesn't have a mouth, and she's trying to eat through her eyes.
Right.
And not just eat through her eyes, we could say fuck through her eyes. Like, there's libidinal something that she is unable to, that she doesn't have the machinery or whatever to, and I guess, like, would you characterize Kitty, and this is just, I'm maybe asking you to sort of talk about my reading of it, like, and as indicative of like a society that is using, that has become so image-oriented, image-obsessed, and it's led to dysfunction partially because we are hoping images in our eyes will do something that
they can't.
Intrinsically cannot.
Yeah. What's the question?
like both. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah.
And also,
it's an interesting proposal.
And also, do you think that is partly responsible for where we're at?
This is interesting. Yeah, this is interesting. I do think, yes, I'm inclined to agree with you, because I do think that people ascribe meaning to images that I personally, as someone who is like really invested in making them and thinking about them, I don't think is fair to give to images. Like, I think images are kind of like nothing. You know, they're fluffy things that exist and are disposable by nature of what they, like, that's actually the joy of imagery, is that it is like infinitely reproducible, and it's like, you can change it and you can destroy it and it bounces back like Hello Kitty, right? Like, an image is an immaterial thing, right? But I think people are ascribing material meaning to images at all time, kind of generally, or like that's the sort of impulse, right? Is to imagine that they have some material effect on the world, which again, like I said earlier, is like an interaction that I'm just trying to like understand, because there is an interaction, but I don't quite know what it is. And I do think that people, I think, I don't know, I mean, I almost want to put it back to you, because you wrote this great article about like Trump as an image, right? And like the image that of Trump world, and like the imagery that he sort of like projects and sort of generates, like clearly has had like a political and tangible and like emotional and then therefore like economic and material effect on the world. And yeah, I think like people are now sort of, I don't know, like, I'm not sure exactly what I'm saying about this, but like, yeah, I feel like there is, I think people get really activated by what images are doing and how images work and like what's happening in images, because I think they believe that there's like a real definite moral force within imagery, whereas I think I've sort of landed closer to this idea that like images are just these like vessels that we project whatever we want into them. Like they have a quality to them and we react to the quality, but the quality is neutral, right? It's not, there is no like moral quantity or quality to the things that are happening in images or to images themselves. And it's actually just a way, it's like an object that we can use. Like we were talking about this before this, it's like, I was saying like I've made a project with my mother, right? I've made a lot of images of my mother who's here in the audience. And I was saying to you, like, I couldn't actually kind of fully recognize her as like a separate person from myself until I took a picture of her. And then that helped me understand that like, I kind of like take her off my eyeballs is the way I like to talk about it. Where I can like, what am I looking at here? And like images have that function, but the images in and of themselves, like they don't have a moral force. Does this make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I think there's like a projection that they do. I think people assume that they do because they are like they're just projecting their own morality into them or the morality of others that they assume exists that they might disagree with or align with or whatever.
2 comments and a question. One, I think hearing that you have like an adult like mirror stage with your mom via photography is kind of amazing. Just like the idea of like you becoming like separating from like one becoming two sort of via photography.
Yeah.
I've always, I mean, I'm actually not going to go down that road.
Yeah, that's an older book. That's a different publisher.
Yeah, but okay, what I really did want to say is I think your attitude towards images as being, you said light and fluffy, I think is honestly like a healthier attitude towards images and what I would hope. Like I don't think personally.
Well, it isn't. It's like a potato chip phenomenon.
Okay, but here I guess here's what I mean is like I think where I think a lot about like what images have done to society, and I describe our relationship to images as dysfunctional. A lot of my work is sort of about like periods of history and even theological moments where we've sort of understood that maybe these things are we're vulnerable to them. We're more vulnerable to them than we realize. And the push and pull of our sort of love and hate of relationships is can be traced throughout history. But I would argue that the opposite of, it's like a cliche, but the opposite of love is not hate. It's sort of that lighter holding that you're talking about.
It's the opposite of love.
I think the opposite of adoration, like sort of that tight holding and that rejection is actually like the freedom you seem to have with images, which is just holding them more lightly, not taking them too seriously.
Which is the opposite of love. I love images.
No, I actually think that is love.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
good.
I'm talking about like do you know what I'm talking? I'm talking about like taking them too seriously versus rejecting.
Yeah, I mean this is like classic Buddhism, right? It's like we're trying to like have a non-attachment, right? I'm trying to get there. It's a journey.
I think like the opposite of sort of what we're doing as a society is not iconoclasm. Basically, it's not like destroying images. It's actually more like something like what you're talking about, which is being able to hold them lightly.
Yeah.
And not invest in what you're talking about.
I actually think like the images are really not the problem. In my idea, it's actually like the machinery around images that's usually more of the problem. Like it's like how are the images getting to us, and how are the images being kind of like used? Like what are people trying to do with the images? Like what is the the systemic stuff that's happening around the images is the thing that actually maybe does have more, well, I don't know, I don't really believe that has, I don't know where morality exists.
Well, Charlie, will you tell, I mean, honestly, to summarize something else, but Charlie wrote this wonderful essay in Art in America that's basically,
let's talk about AI.
The title is, You Don't Hate AI, You Hate Capitalism. I think that's the title.
That's the title, yeah.
And I think that's sort of what you're leading to right now. If you could sort of explain the thesis in some ways of that article in under 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, okay, I guess to foreground that a little bit is that obviously, so to talk about Cursed finally, it's made with generative AI, it's all generative AI imagery, and I've just been like, I discovered generative AI probably at the same time that everyone else, most of the world did as well. You know, it like appeared on the internet one day. We all had that like Lensa social media trend, right, where everyone was like turning themselves into astronauts and like Marvel characters or whatever. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And so I played around with it, and it was just shocking and surprising to me. So then that's how I started to get into AI, and I played around with it, and mostly was making all the schlocky, stupid, gross stuff that we all, you know, associate with AI imagery writ large. And then eventually I started to make like really amazing, beautiful, to me, things, or like just surprising things that were really like making me actually have to look back at what I felt about image making and images in general. It just like was new in a fundamental way. And so I started making stuff, and I started publicizing it and whatever, and I was just, the reaction was like 99.9% negative. You know, it was just like people were like, you are evil.
I mean, even when the Mac post about this book got like a lot of...
Yeah, and it continues to this day. And I mean, and I will say it's interesting, it mostly happens from kind of legacy institutions posting about it, like Mac is, you know, really very squarely in the photographic tradition, right? Like when we think of Mac, we think of photography, right? And it's kind of a pinnacle of photo books, is to be like a MacBook kind of. And so people who are really, or like followers of Mac and are really invested in Mac, I think a lot of them are actually, they're not so much invested in Mac, they're invested in photography. And there's an expectation that I'm like pretending to make photography here, or like that AI is photography, or that I'm assuming that it's the same, or it exists under the same set of parameters or circumstances or criteria, which I just, it's not a photograph. Like an AI picture is not a photograph, and I don't think that it is, and I'm not trying to pretend that it is. And I think that there is a really important relationship between AI and photography, generative AI and photography. I think generative AI kind of is like the bastard child of photography, really. And so like there is a relationship, and we have to be aware of it, and we have to, I think it's helpful to engage with the relationship between photography and AI. But like if you are imagining that an AI picture is a photograph, it will fail. Like it cannot stand to that kind of scrutiny, because it isn't a photograph. So all the metrics of value that culture has given or created around photography, it won't hold.
It also like wasn't drawn with light. It literally isn't.
Right, it's not photography. But I think people like in the comment section of Mac maybe, or like Aperture wrote an essay about my work as well for Cursed, and you know, Aperture is also like a really photo institution, right? And again, that had like a really strong negative reaction, because I think, yeah, people see this as an existential threat to the photography, whereas I see it actually as like, I actually think almost it's like the opposite, it's like a savior of photography in a way. It's sort of like reinvested photography with a certain potency that photography was sort of losing in a way, because we were so overwhelmed and deluged with photographic imagery that it was being like so decoupled from physical reality. And I'm like, isn't it actually really helpful that we have a thing that is like explicitly decoupled from physical reality and can help us see what's happening with image, like the relationship between images and material reality? It kind of helps us see it maybe more clearly, or more in a more different way. This is not the question you asked me about the article.
It's okay.
Essentially, anyway, all that's to say is that I got a lot of pushback around AI, and I had to sit with that and think, like, where's all this negativity coming from? What are the arguments that people are making? What are the recurring themes in these diatribes that were coming into my email and my inbox and my DMs and whatever? Like, you know, for someone who you don't know to like take it upon themselves to write you an email, to say that they hate you and think that you're like destroying the world is crazy. Like, what is going on in their mind that gave them that passion, you know? So I had to sit and try to figure it out. And essentially what I figured out is like, everyone is concerned about capital. Everyone is concerned about labor, right? Like whose labor is going to be valued? Who controls labor, right? Like, and what does labor mean? Basically, is essentially like how I could boil down what all the arguments were. Basically, it was like, AI is going to take my job, or like this is not creative because you're lazy. There's no craft. You're not engaging with the real world, so like therefore it's meaningless. So there was a type of activity that needed that was like a prerequisite for validating creativity, according to these according to the critiques.
Yeah.
All right, I lost my brain for a second. Yeah, and so I was just like, oh, like actually we're like having an anxiety about labor, and so let me think about that. What was going on there? And it made it very clear. It seemed very clear to me the more I thought about it that like, oh, what we're worried about is like Elon Musk and like Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg and whoever like controlling the narrative completely, right? And because they actually own the algorithms, they're the people who are like infringing our copyright or whatever. Like we're actually concerned primarily about ownership, right? Who owns what? And what is the relationship between ownership and creativity? These seem to be the like, when I would boil down all the critiques, that seemed to be the anxieties that were there. And so, yeah, and when you think about labor and you think about ownership, that's capitalism. Like that's what we're talking about there. And so that's essentially, these are the kind of things I tried to think through in that article that you cited.
It's a great article. I recommend everyone check it out. I want to just, there's something in the article I really agree with, and I think people are showing up in your inbox, and you sort of address it a little bit in the article. I just imagine, like there's nothing that soothes the masters of the world upstream, like people showing up in your inbox, just sort of like the narcissism of small differences, infighting, and like you're available basically, and
totally.
like that's why they show up in your inbox.
Yeah,
and
completely.
And it bums me out, and I think the idea of like using that energy against other artists is to me like kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's what like coming into an artist and being like, you're like destroying artists.
You're available.
Like,
you're available. But I will say there are a couple of things I do disagree with, and this is I want to.
Oh yes.
With you, yeah.
Let's get into it. Oh,
I think
God.
Charlie, the focus on capital and capitalism to me leaves out two important points. One, photography is drawing with light, and although AI images are trained on data sets that are full of images drawn with light, eventually those data sets will be muddled up and slowly by AI images themselves,
Sure.
and that light will start to fade. Like it'll be like a distant star, like essentially you'll be like, oh, it's like kind of see it now, So I guess I would just defend those who are anxious about this. It's saying it's not just about capital, it's about something more fundamental.
Which is?
The
light.
The real, the light, no, I mean, I think if...
Well, you're worried about the feedback loop of AI, right? Like AI will, like the proliferation of AI, the kind of scalability of AI will kind of overtake the scalability of photographic imagery, and so it will kind of...
I think it's threatening like the idea of like the human soul.
How so?
I mean, I think that light.
But okay, here's where because this is a common argument too. That people are coming is like it's unhuman and it has no spirit or soul or whatever, right? But I'm just like, we live in an ecosystem of culture, right? Like AI, we actually have like humans are really adaptable and have like a really acute sense of stuff, right? And like we know where to put AI in our lives. Like we understand how, like, I think we understand more than we realize, like what the difference between like a photograph and an AI image is, and like what it's doing and how it works or whatever. Like, AI images have not existed very long, and already I think all of us can identify them instantaneously. Like we already know, like, oh, if I see like a little smoothness here, it's an AI.
I'm not sure the user of consequence can. I think like the super, as in like the average human being.
I think actually they can. Yeah. Or at least they have the capacity to, for sure, easily to have that legibility, literacy rather. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but I think, I don't know. I guess I have a slight kind of sense of optimism around that, where, no, I feel like we're gonna keep making other types of imagery. There's gonna be other types of technology, etc., that are going to exist, and like those things will also kind of run a pace, and maybe not a pace, but they will like happen in tandem with AI. I don't know. I don't know. I sympathize with the anxiety, but I don't know. It feels slightly overblown.
I have one more devil's advocate sort of question about this, because I do think like.
I'm going to think about that more as we talk, because, yeah,
no, but
it's an interesting pushback. Thank you.
Wonderfully, you have when talking about this sort of separated capitalism and the context from the tool to some degree.
Yeah.
And one, it strikes me, to be honest, as similar to the defense that you do hear from Silicon Valley, which is like, this is just a tool, it's just a hammer. Like how we cannot be held responsible for how people use a hammer.
Well, they can though.
Okay,
is the thing, because there's a scale thing there, right? Like they have proportional power in order to inform what the tool does.
But their argument is built upon the idea that there's like a neutrality in tools, and you used the word neutral before.
I believe that, yeah.
You believe that? I don't. I think. I mean, actually, I don't think you believe it, because whenever we talk about AI, you always talk about the biases and the and those who are building it.
Okay.
Like design is always political, as you know.
Sure.
So, but I just wanted to quickly say one more thing. That I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
No, please.
But I don't like we can go back to the image itself, like photography itself. Photography, I would say, is born out of a similar impulse as AI. Like why do we make images in the cave? It's like we want to. I mean, when photography was first invented, or when the daguerreotype was announced in like Paris, like it was, the idea was they could map. There was intertwined with astronomy. You could like map the stars. So it is always a tool of mastery and mapping and classification. Like photography wasn't a neutral tool. It was about mastering our environment. And I think that thinking of AI similarly, I mean, to me it's just like we're in another conversation about like grenade to atomic bomb as we are to like photography to AI. Like, this is just a question really about technology is never neutral and always about mastery. And I think regardless of context of capitalism, I would say capitalism is born out of the same impulse that photography is.
Interesting. I'm trying to understand. I guess I'm trying to understand what you mean by mastery. Like, what does mastery mean?
I would say that we, this book is really about visual language to me, and I would say language and visual language.
Control?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I think reality.
Sure. Well, I think like the human condition is. I mean, this is kind of what that book is really trying to figure out, is like, how can you just like, and this idea of like dissonance, right? Is like, how can we be comfortable with ambiguity, right? Like we have it as humans, I think we have an impulse towards control, towards like, trying to categorize or whatever as a method of, mastery or control. And that's like a human impulse that we're gonna apply to whatever tool comes across our little grubby hands. But like also then there's like the dual side of that, which is like actually we ultimately realize, and again this is like always backing up into Buddhist philosophy somehow, which is like you don't control anything, there's no like functional relationship to control. And so you actually have to sort of give yourself up to ambiguity, right? And like that's really, it feels like unhuman thing to do. It's like a really scary thing to do because you're kind of like accepting that there's like a groundlessness, that you're accepting a certain kind of like ontological, to use that word again, like vulnerability, right? Like a fundamental vulnerability. Okay, in terms of timing, I feel like we should open it up to people. I don't feel like I gave you a very satisfying answer to your rebuttals, so maybe we can do that. Maybe the audience can help you do that, but I was gonna end this part by saying, may us all be like better power bottoms, to some degree, rather than like, But I'm gonna think through this, what you mean by this, but I don't know, I just think like AI is like made by people, even if it's like auto-generating itself, it's still like, or the value and meaning that we're going to ascribe to anything is ultimately coming from human relationships, right? So even if the thing that we're encountering is completely autonomously made and has like no trace of light or no trace of human hand, the meaning and value that we ascribe to whatever it is that we're encountering is fundamentally informed by the human hand and like by human relationships and by our relationships to ourselves and our bodies and like the bodies of others. Which, to like finally talk about Cursed, like the book is like supposed to be about the body, right? And like what happens actually when you like try to represent the body without actually even having like any recourse to the body. Like what is that happening? And that was a sort of like general exploration. That's the sort of artist statement that I'm slipping in about this book that you all came to hear me talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe we should have like talked for 2 hours and then gotten on stage, but hopefully this was fun for other people, not just us. And maybe if you guys can ask some questions that, anchor us a little bit, that would be wonderful. So if anyone has any questions, there's a mic that's gonna go around.
And if there are no questions, we can just keep talking. Yeah.
Can you talk about the process of creation for this book? Like the images are so like they're kind of mind bending a little bit, and they deliberately. It seems like you deliberately are creating images that people say that is not a photograph, but they have so much photographic feel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm definitely trying to sort of emphasize with this book like the relationship between this type of imagery and photography. I made a very classic photo book. It's very like traditional in that way, and the reason I did that is to appeal very specifically to photography and to like force the conversation between what's happening with this new type of representational imagery and photography. Like what are the assumptions and expectations that we bring to photographs, and where do they map on to this new type of imagery, and where do they fail? That's actually what I was like really trying to figure out for myself, just on like the top abstract level. And it often fails, right? And I'm actually really interested in that failure, and I think that the failure is super beautiful, and kind of in the sort of horseshoe theory of it all, I'm like, you have a closer, it's like more readily, success is more readily available through the practice of failure, is kind of how I experienced making these AI images. Like when they misrepresented the body or misunderstood the body or physical space in these different ways, or like the relationship between light and material or whatever, the ways that they misunderstood it, or, and even using that language, understand is like, it's inevitable that you anthropomorphize the tool, which is also a whole other thing. But, the failures that were persistent and consistent, I think, are just like inbuilt into the technology. I think no matter how good the technology gets, as long as it's like an LLM, which is whatever, we don't need to get overly technical, but like the way that the technology is currently structured, like it will always fail, I think, to some degree. And I think that failure, it just like really helps open up that space where we can look and like, okay, we see that it fails, but like according to what? Like why do we see that as a failure? What expectations are we bringing to this idea of failure or success? And that's actually what I'm trying to just like evoke in the book, is like, what is a failed body? I was thinking a lot about ability too, and disability, and like what makes a desirable body, or a healthy body, or a beautiful body, or a valuable body. How do bodies, like what is the capacity of a body, right? Like those are things that I was thinking a lot in this work, and that I found that this tool and AI imagery was actually really helping me access really immediately and urgently, because it was so prone to failure. Like I wouldn't have made this book with photography. It just like, I don't think it would have been like kind of corny to me. And that's why. And to talk about the process, again, it was also like, it was a very iterative thing, just to be pedantic about it, because maybe people are curious about this. I used mostly Midjourney to make this, just because I think Midjourney has a like more interesting and more robust data set, based on all the different models that I've tried, and I tried to make my own models, whatever. But at the time of making Midjourney, just like satisfied the photographic quality that I was after. And basically I would like put some inputs in, I would get an output. The output would be mostly bad, usually. And so then I would take that output and then I would input it again as part of a new input. And I would inflect it or elaborate it or push it against a different kind of input. And so it was a very like human centipede type process where I was just like, spin cycle of imagery, and eventually something that would be interesting would come out to me. And then of course, like with any book, like eventually there was like a vibe basically that the book was kind of creating. And I then could use that as a way to sort of move forward in generating those images.
It became easier.
I wouldn't say, actually, I'd say it probably became a little harder because it's one also thing that I really love about AI, which is weirdly backs into a lot of the critique around AI, is that there's a certain level of control that this idea of control and there's a certain level of where you just have to relinquish control to the tool. It's really hard to get it to do exactly what you imagine and what you want it to do. It just won't, And it technologically, chaos is built into it, right? So it literally cannot generate the same thing twice. It's just not possible technologically. And so, so there's, what was so beautiful and exciting about it is that there was a moment where I just had to be like, it was like the lottery a little bit, which, people say like, well, you're giving away creativity, you're like giving away the artist's intention or whatever by engaging with that kind of unpredictability, which to me, like, I almost have no rebuttal to. I'm just like, I don't know if that's all you think about photography, that's your prerogative, but like, I fundamentally disagree. Like photography is so much, or creativity is just so much more complicated and diverse and weird and wonky than that. And I just really loved that chaotic aspect of it where you didn't really know what was going to happen. And so actually, like, as the book sort of cohered and became really narrow, it actually became really, really hard to get those last batch of images that were trying to like make it an actual coherent body of work, because I couldn't really tell it to do like, oh, I need a picture of a person doing this. That's not how the process worked. And so it was actually really hard to finish the book once I figured it out. But yeah.
That's cool, Charlie. Like the idea that the black box of the AI, like re-injecting some mystery into the process is capital M mystery is like really nice. I never thought about it that way. Like there's some relinquishing of control there. I like that.
Yeah, which I see as really an analogy to photography, where like it's like the classic like street photographer, right? It's like you wander around and you like wait for life to happen to you, and then the artistry or the intentionality behind it is you being available and knowing how to react to the things that are presented to you. And so actually to me, like AI and photography on that sense are very similar, where you're just kind of like, what's reality gonna do now? And in this case, it's like a weird kind of, it's like a representation of reality rather than reality itself that you're interfacing with, but that's just like it's just like a different one step. I don't know even know how to describe it, but yeah.
I always thought of like the screenshot as the
photography.
documentary photography of the digital world.
That's cool.
And when I saw the AIs really come up, I was like, oh, now we're in the studio, and so we have everything we need. But the way you said it, I like too. That's really nice.
Cool. I like the screenshot of this street photography of today. Into it.
Kind of just answered this. I was going to ask you like how collaborative is your process with AI, but knowing that you go through multiple iterations, when you go into it in the first place with your initial prompt, how much information are you giving it, or like how much are you going in with any kind of vision at all, or is it just sort of like subject?
It kind of depends on what I'm trying to do. I like to be as context specific as I can. I'm obsessed with context generally, which is another hour's worth of conversation that we can have. But it really depends on like what I'm trying to have it do. But generally, actually, I found in my own, just again to be kind of pedantic, like the less information, the better. Because like I was describing, it's more of an iterative process for me, where I'll start somewhere very general and basic, and then I'll see like, okay, this output is like not right, but it's like more right than these other ones. So let me try it and put that back in. And then it's like a refining process in that way. But I don't know. Does that answer your question? I mean, collaborative? No, I don't actually. If anything, I have like a pretty antagonistic relationship with it, because it's always like, I'm like, fucking idiot. Like, why are you, this is so ugly. Why would you make I put such a beautiful input and you made something so ugly. Like, why? You know, it's actually, I have like a much more frustrated, I mean, that's a type of collaboration for sure. But there's one other thing that I wanted to say to what you asked, which just left my brain. So let's see if anyone else has another question, and by the time the mic gets to them, I'll remember.
We're a little over time, so maybe one more. I want to be talking some books. Who's in the back, sorry?
Oh, that's my sister.
I didn't really hear this one very well, but I feel like it's like tacked on the end of that the year would be important, and I can't remember if it was like 2 Christmases ago or 3 or something, where you came to the barn with like an app and you were having such a good time with it, and it was like you were putting in the prompts, and then we also simultaneously were sitting around and doing
This is my sister,
the human version, where like you have a piece of paper and you fold it and you see the
Like
prompts,
exquisite
you keep
corpse, yeah.
drawing, and then you look at them at the end, and we've all put in like a piece of the body, and it's this whole thing. And I just feel like just because I've never asked you this, like how far along is or quote unquote along is the quote unquote technology that you used here versus like the Christmas app those years ago?
Oh, it's super different. I mean, the capacity of it is very different. And that was something very interesting about making this book, is, you know, book has like a different time scale, right, than AI. Like a book is slow, and it like forces slowness kind of on people. And, you know, even when you finish the book, there's like a several month delay before it even like gets here, you know? And that was like a real interesting new pressure that I was having, because as I was making the book over the course of a year, like the technology was changing as I was making it, and it was having like different things became possible. The way it rendered things became more robust and more photographic, let's say. And so then it was like, how can I make a book that's like not gonna immediately date itself? Which again is, I think, like a common critique too, is it's just like this thing that is just like ugly and pointless and is like doomed to failure because of the pacing and the scaling of it. And so trying to make a book out of it, I had to really confront like the fact that I was working with an emergent technology that like we actually just don't know what it is good for, we don't know what it means, we don't know how it works, and the only way we actually can understand it at this point is to look back nostalgically at pre-existing modes of cultural production, right? Like that's why I'm trying to force the conversation between photography, is because like right now, like that's actually, for me as a quote-unquote photographer, like coming at this as someone who's known to work with photography, like that's actually the only way I know how to understand images. But actually I think like AI images are going to be best used as AI images. But we just don't know what an AI image is. And we don't know what it's good for, we don't know how it's going to exist in culture, what it's good for, what it's bad for. We're like discovering that together collectively as it, like it's a thing that we have to decide as a body, you know, as a community, and the time and stuff is required for us to understand what it's good for and what it means and how the tool is used and whether it's neutral or not, right? Like that's a thing that we all decide through collective effort and conversation. But it's like so new that like making a book and trying to just hold that down and try to like lock in a moment in time felt very perilous and confusing. And so ultimately then, yeah, I had to sort of say like, okay, well if the work meets the vibe test, you know, if like the vibe that I've established for the work, if it is in accordance with that, then it goes in the book, whether or not it's gonna look dated or whatever in a couple months or a few years. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and I say this when I like teach and people are asking me like, oh, I want to use AI, and tell me how I should use it or what do I do? You know, the thing I try to emphasize most is like it's emergent. Like fuck around and find out is literally the only advice that is real. You know, like this year AI video. This is the year for AI video. It's like just become popular, available in the way that like Midjourney or whatever was a couple years ago. And like I am so curious to see what that does to us, because video is a whole other thing, you know. Yeah.
I was gonna say like, with this maybe to wrap up, like part of why I think you and I are talking at each other so fast, and like what you're talking, and why people are coming at you in comment sections is like nothing is clear. What is quite clear is we're in this moment of transition and it's very interesting, and we like don't really know what's going to happen, and it's scary.
Well, right, and this is like we have to accept ambiguity.
Yeah. I just feel like that's like the one thing that to me is quite clear. It's like, and it's cool to be recognizing it with people in a room like this, and like we are living through something technological and existential, and we don't know where it's going to go, and it's interesting and
Yeah, and some people find that terrifying, and some people find that exciting, and I think it's both and, right?
both and. All right, thank you guys.